Australia's women's soccer team, the Matildas, will receive the same pay as their male counterparts, the Socceroos, under a new groundbreaking deal. The money brought in for both national teams, including commercial revenue, will be pooled and then split to each player equally. Months of negotiations with officials from Football Federation Australia's reshaped the payment structure. It's hoped the deal will be finalised before the Matildas face Chile on Saturday. The Football Federation sent a statement to Sky News saying FFA confirms it has been in negotiations for many months with PFA regarding the national team's collective bargaining agreement. The negotiations have been constructive, but have not yet concluded. FFA will not make further comments at this time.
Let's get some reaction now. Tom Smithies joins us. In terms of the Matildas, Tom, was this coming for some time? We know that we've loved them as a nation, but, you know, in terms of the structure of the way that football's run in this country, did you think that this was inevitable?
I guess it is, for the simple fact that all sides involved in this wanted it to happen. Football Federation, the Players' Union, and most importantly, both the men and the women wanted it. The men have essentially agreed to forego money by all the commercial money that comes in related to the two national teams being split 50-50. There is more money that comes in related to the Socceroos historically. The sponsorship deals are worth more, that kind of thing. Although, interestingly, I think a lot more Matilda shirts have been sold over the last year with the World Cup. But all sides have decided that it's equitable, that the money is split equally between the two teams. You could argue, for instance, that the Matildas are a more visible team. You know, they're more successful. They got up to third in the world, I think it was, last year. They've got to the Olympic quarterfinals. They've done well at World Cup. So they're a more sort of visible team, although the Socceroos bring in more money. So, yeah, it was inevitable in the sense that all sides wanted it to happen. It is important to note it hasn't, as the FFA said in a statement, there hasn't actually been signed off yet, but it's all been agreed in principle and it should be announced before the end of the week.
That's really interesting that you make that point, that they're actually higher profile. Why aren't they getting the bigger sponsorship dollars?
I think they're playing catch-up in the sense that there's been an increasing focus on women's sport over the last, or in recent years. The Matildas have done it tough in terms of all the facilities they had, the funding they had for a long, long time, and still were pretty successful. But as they've got more successful in recent years, and the world has realised that it was inequitable for the two sides to have different levels of funding, we're now sort of starting to realise that the Matildas were overachieving and that they deserve to have the sort of funding that the Socceroos have had for years in terms of backroom staff and flights and things like that, as well as sharing in the income. So this is a groundbreaking deal. Other countries have had two equal pay between men's and women's national teams. That's happened quite recently, but nobody has thrown quite the level of resources at this, and to have both sides completely equally represented right across the board is a unique thing, and it will be really quite a special thing when it's announced at the end of the week.
Yeah, it certainly is in football, and it's quite timely, isn't it, Tom, off the back of a record paycheck for another Aussie female sports star, the tennis player from Ipswich yesterday. Unbelievable, Ash Barty, that paycheck. But I guess football catching up to some other sports in that sense.
Yeah, and the difference, of course, that's an individual sport with huge amounts of prize money. This is a team sport, and the amount of money that's required to get the Socceroos and the Matildas together in terms of flying them in from around the world, the money that's involved in paying them to be in camp, that kind of thing, has always been a bit of a lead weight. But I think everyone's decided that it doesn't matter, that it should cost the same to get the men and the women together because they are both equally playing for their country, and that the money, not finding the money wasn't an excuse for not having it. So it's a fantastic result to see in this same week, to see Ash Barty be so successful and to be another trailblazer to making boys and girls look at a woman as a sportswoman as a hero, and not thinking, was it a man or is it a woman, just being inspired by seeing someone achieve. And that's hopefully we'll get more of that when the Matildas play Chile on Saturday at Bankwest Stadium. So we'll see lots of kids there being inspired to go out and play football afterwards because they watch the Matildas, who are amongst the best in the world and deserve to be recognised as such.
How long does this agreement last once it is signed in, if indeed it is? Because it seems like, I don't know if I'm being cynical, but maybe the men might not be feeling as generous in a few years if the Matildas aren't doing quite as well on the world stage.
I think it'd be very hard to row back on it's the principles at stake here. We're talking percentages, and that's why it's so important. It's not saying they'll get X million. It's saying that the 40% of commercial income will be split equally between the men and the women. For the men to try and take that back would be next to impossible now. I'm not sure of the exact term. They're usually 3 or 4 years, these deals. It will be backdated, I think, to July the 1st. So we'd be sort of effectively be halfway through the first year of it. But no, once the principles of percentages and equity are established, there's no going back, nor should there be. So I'm pretty confident this will be the structure going forward for a long time.